So we're back inside out of that ferocious wind and in the San Francisco Design Center that we manage for Build San Francisco. This facility is used for high school students to learn about architecture, construction, and engineering. It's open to any high school student in San Francisco, and kids leave their schools at noon and come down here and take classes from us. One of the problems that we pose to our students is the Bicycle Design Challenge, which is what we hope you'll be working on. We've taken a look at the site and have an idea of the constraints with that, and we're going to kind of do a little walkthrough now of how we would start our design process. We have to remember the site in general. There was a long pier out this way, and then in here there was this kind of Nebraska-shaped walkway. And then below that, if you can think of this as being almost like the state of Kansas, we have a little map of the Midwest here. And this area was where we would probably be doing our building. As I mentioned before, this particular area is off limits because it's out over the water. And in order for it to support a structure, we would have to put in new pilings underneath. It would be a big environmental project, and one probably that would never get approval. So we have this area to work in. And I'm going to point out none of this is to scale. At this point, we're just going to sketch out some ideas. We have the Embarcadero traffic down here, which of course we can't involve ourselves in, and a large sidewalk area here. So that gives us a very narrow footprint and that we're going to be able to work in. There are the trees down here and the flags over here. And we want to keep those features because it makes it such an attractive site. And probably we would run into trouble with permitting if we included removal of trees from the site. So the area that we have to work with is really long and narrow. And that means that probably we're going to be stuck with kind of a basic box that we're going to have to work with. That doesn't mean that we can't do something interesting architecturally, but it does put a certain level of constraints on us. Now we're talking about 2,400 square feet, so we're going to have some sort of like 60 by 40 kind of space. And by leaving enough room here so that we're not impinging on the walkway, with 40 feet about here and 60 along here, that's going to give us kind of the footprint that we're going to be working with. Now there's some things to think about before we start thinking about interior space here. One is, if this is going to be a single-story building, how can we break away from that basic box? One of our students, Matthew Liu, had a very clever idea in which he came up with a sort of cantilever design in which it's a box sitting on top of another box with a ramp from the street up, and then another enclosure over here. So let's take a look at a physical model of a bicycle pavilion that was done by one of our students, a senior named Matthew Liu. I've included all of Matthew Liu's Revit files and his renderings, which will give you a very good idea, especially of how he managed his interior space. But we can learn some things from just looking at the physical model. First, it's fairly obvious which side is the north side. Here we have glass curtain wall, whereas on the south side, where we would expect a lot of solar gain, we're going to have a different window pattern done with this sort of panel system. Here we have a pass-through, which is very neat for bringing the bicycles in, a ramp up the center, which would go to bicycle lockers, and entrance into the facility. He placed his rental space here on the south side, and meetings and kiosks over here on the south side. On this side would be the large workshop area, which you would have with all this beautiful view. He was able to give this basic box a lot more architectural things with this cutout here in the top, this sort of louvering, and the very nice paneling on this side. One of the features that I really liked was this large pass-through area here, where you could have bicycle racks set up for people and really good entrance and exit areas for people bringing their bikes in and out. It's a very nice model, very nicely done, really clean, so we were very pleased with this. And I think when you look at his Revit files, you're going to find that those are impressive as well. The other thing is that you're going to want to think how you're going to be imaginative with the interior space and what materials you're going to use to dress it up to make it really attractive. One of the things that you're going to have to keep in mind is the orientation of the building. When we were out at the bay taking a look, here's the water line out here. North is more or less in this direction. So orienting the building this way, it's not true north and south, but it's very close to being north and south. And that means that we're not going to have a lot of direct sunlight. In fact, the path of the sun is probably going to be something like this, with sunlight more on the south side of the building than on the north. That means that this particular wall here could really be a curtain wall, and we're going to have that beautiful view this way of the water and Angel Islands and the marina over here. So we have that view as well. But if we're going to have the big curtain wall here, then we have to figure out how we're going to divide up the space. Now, were there several things that we talked about that we would want in this space? One was a meeting room. Another was a workshop where we could hold classes for repair of bicycles. We wanted a rental and sales area. We wanted information kiosks. We wanted bike lockers. We wanted other information for the tourists, and of course restrooms. So we have to start thinking which side of the building is going to be best for these purposes. Probably we don't want to put the rental and sales area over here on the north side with that beautiful view, because we don't want our customers looking at Angel Island. We want them focusing on the bicycles. So that's probably going to go in here somewhere. We're also going to have to keep in mind foot traffic and bicycle traffic patterns, which are coming up this way and moving into the building in these two directions, which means we're going to have to make allowances for certain kinds of entrance and egress. Bicycles take up a lot of space. You have to keep in mind that a person wheeling a bicycle is basically the size of two persons. So we can't have small 30-inch doors. We're going to have something fairly significant for entrance and exit. Our computer kiosks, if people are going to be looking at computers, could also probably go on the south side, because once again, they're not going to be interested in this beautiful view. And then we can also have a lounge area for the tourists and some restroom facilities here. We also have this extra little space out here for bicycle racks, bicycle lockers, and things outside that don't have to be on the interior of the building. The San Francisco climate is reasonably mild. We don't have to worry too much about wintertime conditions. So that leaves the north side. This area in here for meeting rooms, workshops, and all of the things where we'll want that beautiful view, but we'll also want to be able to focus on the necessities. So we'll maybe do a repair shop in here, conference rooms here, and then maybe down the center we might have staff rooms and offices for the people who are going to manage this facility and work there. So that's pretty much the things that we're going to have to think about. None of this is engraved in stone. When you do your model, think about how you can move things around. Maybe you can do some other kind of imaginative design besides the basic box. There are other ways that you can put this together. And of course, if you are doing it in your own community, you may have all kinds of space to work with, rather than this little narrow space that we have in San Francisco. As you get into this project, I'm hoping that you'll take a lot of time in this phase of the design process. You're going to want to do a lot of sketches, take those sketches and move them into scale drawings, and then I really recommend that for things like orientation of your building and overall shape of the building, you do some massing studies using Autodesk Revit architecture. The more time that you spend in this phase of the design, you're going to find much more success at the end of the project.